Brief DVM's coming at you today with kind of an interesting review. We took the drill nutcracker. There's a couple different versions of this available that you can buy, and we kind of put it up against the Hunt's nutcracker. Both of these are more kind of residential nutcracking machines. As you know, we put out a video, I think several of them actually, on the Hunt's nutcracker, both the manual version and the electric. The drill nutcracker that we got here is a stainless steel model, and it is pretty much made for like a household half-inch drill. At least that's how they, kind of advertise it on YouTube and stuff. And it's made to fit over a pail. You got the base here where you screw these legs into it, and then they fit over the top of a pail. What we've seen over the last several years from putting out our Hunt's electric nutcracker videos, a lot of people have come back and said, well, your Hunt's electric nutcracker just cracks too slow. And I'm not going to disagree that it's got kind of a monotonous single nut at a time kind of approach. But what's interesting is we got this unit and we kind of put it to the test, and we really thought we did a fairly decent job of testing it, and we found some good things about it, but we also found a lot of good things about the Hunt's electric nutcracker. We thought we'd share them with you. So after we got this little beast assembled, we certainly wanted to kind of put it to work and put it through the paces. It does look well built, for the price and stuff, and it's a very clean looking machine. It comes with some nice operating directions, and then you'll note when you read the directions that you may have to run the nuts through this 3 times to get them to about the same level that the Hunt's does after one crack on one nut. So that's kind of an important thing to get the meat out. The other thing is the directions were a little lacking on what kind of drill to use. Obviously, you need a drill with kind of a half-inch chuck at the top. So we started with a big, powerful Makita drill, and not really the best. The Makita drill is made for really going fairly fast, and even though it's got a set ability on the trigger, when you run it at a slower speed, it doesn't have enough torque, and it jammed up several times just in the trial runs. Even when we back the door up, it was still jamming on occasion because as a hard nut would go through. And as you know, black walnuts, the native variety and even the cultivar type variety are very hard. So that seemed frustrating right off the bat as we're trying to free these nuts. But we switched gears, and believe it or not, we actually went to a cordless Craftsman 19.2 volt, and that seemed to work better because you could kick it into this low speed and kind of open it up as fast as it could go in low speed, and the drill nutcracker really handled it quite well. So I would say there's a little bit of finesse finding the right drill to run on the machine. Obviously, a corded drill would be a little easier, and you don't have to worry about batteries. But that was one little downside to kind of setting up the device. The other downside is the heavier the drill, the more it wants to tip the pail system over. Nothing that can't be overcome by a brick in the bottom of the pail or something like that, but certainly something that at least needs to be noted. As far as space requirements, the drill nutcracker took up less space on the workbench, and it's a lot easier to move around. It's much more mobile friendly, which is good compared to the Hunt's electric. But eventually we got the system set up right, and we were cracking nuts, and after 3 times of putting the nuts through, we were doing it great. So we decided to kind of set up the process. And what we decided to do is we take 50 nuts, weighing 3 pounds, 7.8 ounces, and put them into 2 pails. A Kemp's pail we're going to use for the drill nutcracker, and a Roundy's pail we're going to use for the Hunt's electric nutcracker. And we decided we'd time how long it takes one person on the same machines to crack the 50 nuts. And then we'd also look at, how much meat was achieved, how much retained meat was left, and certainly how much waste, and try to get an overall perspective of how these two machines differ and what's the advantages of them. Again, we now own both, and we like both. It's just that it's kind of different as to how they function. So again, the whole process was timed. The whole process was weighed out. Like I said, we started here with the drill nutcracker. We ran them through the paces, so to speak. We went pretty much as quickly as we could, and this is after we've used the machine about 4 or 5 times, so that we really had it kind of dialed in, and we knew where to dial it in, because we're running the nuts through it basically 3 times to get them to the same point that you would have with the Hunt's electric nutcracker, which you run through once. remember though, the difference is the Hunt's is cracking one nut at a time, and this is cracking multiple. You have to, each time you put the nuts through the drill nut cracker, you have to close the gate a little bit to get it to crack more and more of the nut to eventually get to the meat. We're using at this point all native walnuts because they're the harder ones to crack for the sake of example. We want to kind of use the toughest ones. Here's what it looks like after just one pass. Obviously, you wouldn't be able to get a lot of meat out of these. So again, you run them through 3 times. After you ran them through 3 times, they start getting more and more and more cracked down. And then you eventually get to the point where you actually have a fair amount of meat freed from the nuts. And a lot of it is in good shape. Some of the smaller nuts we found will go through at the beginning process, but again, as you tighten it up, it will eventually crack them too. And you end up with a fairly pureed chunk of meats and shells, at the end. I'm not going to go through the process of how we operated the Hunts. I've got videos on that already online. But again, we timed the process of cracking 50 nuts of that one too into a roundy pail. And here I am just picking them out of the machine. We cracked them straight for the sake of time. We just basically sat there and cracked them. And we, timed how long it took to crack. And I'm going to show you all the details of that in a few minutes. As you can see, there's some larger pieces in this too. But there's also a lot of fragmented shells, which means, a fair amount of meat came out. And again, you can only do this one pass. So that machine, the Hunt's Electric, I want to say is about $500. For sake of argument, you could say the drill nutcracker is about the same. So these machines are pretty comparable in cost, folks, depending upon how you want to do it. So I think we've had our Hunt's Electric now for numerous years, and again, the drill nutcracker more recent. So these are the 2 pails. This is what it looks like when we got done with the experiment, so to speak, as far as the actual work. And then we took them up onto cookie sheets, and we're not timing the process of picking out the nuts because that's not fair. But we put the same person on each tray, so there'd be a little bit more consistency when it comes to picking out the meats. And we had them divide them into 3 groups: waste, which is shell material; retained meats, which is in the shell; and then the actual meats. Here is the Hunt's Nutcracker. It was done in about 7 minutes. It had about 13.8 ounce, or excuse me, a pound and 13.8 ounces of waste, 15.7 ounces or so of nut meat, and 10 ounces of redos or retained meats. That's not bad. I was moderately impressed with the whole process. And then basically what we did from this point is we pushed that all aside and then took the drill nutcracker and did the exact same process with the same person, had them go through it again, pick out the meats, separate them into complete shell pieces, retained meats, and obviously, nuts or meats that we want to eat in a jar. And when we got done with that, it was kind of interesting putting all the details together because there was advantages to both machines. So here you are. We've given you the Hunts before, and now here's the drill nutcracker. So to do this, it took 12 minutes, but it achieved 1 pound 13 ounces of waste, 15.6 ounces of meat, and then 11.2 ounces of retained. And to some people they may say, well, geez, that's not any better, but it definitely has some advantages, and we want to make sure that we show the advantages and the disadvantages of both machines, because I think both have their place. One thing that was interesting is we did take all the retained meats from both machines, and we ran them back through the drill nutcracker, and believe it or not, we got 13 ounces of more meat, and that was pretty impressive. So one of the biggest advantages of the drill nutcracker that we found is that you can redo the nuts, and what I mean by that is you have retained meats. You can run them back through that process, tighten up that little grate down at the bottom, and you can re-crack them and even achieve more nuts out of it. That is the number one biggest advantage out of the drill nutcracker that we found, and certainly has a purpose on our farm to get those hard last few retained meats out if you wish to do it out of a very hard round shell nut. On the other side of the coin, though, the Hunt's nutcracker certainly had the advantage of time. It certainly equaled the performance during that same time period as the drill cracker. It was quieter. It has a heavier duty construction, even though the construction of the drill nutcracker was good, and its ease of use is simplistic. And of course, let's be honest, you're only running it through once, so the disadvantage was is you couldn't redo it. But they both had advantages, folks. Hope you enjoyed the video, folks. Please like and subscribe to our channel. We'll keep putting out great comparison videos like this.